Finally, another group of 5 team in one of my prediction videos. That's right, today I'm doing Oklahoma State at Boise State. Let's go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's me again, Golden Blue Dude. If you haven't already, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. And right now is the best time to hit that subscribe button. I'm in the middle of my 2021 season prediction videos. This is teams 31 and 32, and I have many more to come. Don't forget to check out my friends at Tri-State Wood Sketch. All you have to do is send him a picture, and he'll turn it into a beautiful piece of art on wood. Check out his website at www.tristatewoodsketch.com. Tell him Golden Blue Dude sent you, and you'll get 20% off. Today we're talking about Oklahoma State at Boise State. Both of these teams are a bit of a question mark this year. Last year, Oklahoma State was highly touted as one of the best offenses in the nation. Turned out to be the opposite. They had a good defense, the offense not so much. For Boise State, they had a decent season, but they still have some things to figure out. They do return a lot of talent. First, we're going to talk about Oklahoma State. Last year, they finished the season 8-3, third in the Big 12. Their preseason ranking for this year is 28. Mike Gundy has been fairly successful at Oklahoma State, but the Cowboys lack leadership and discipline. It's as if Oklahoma State is fine at being okay. The biggest eyebrow raiser last year was when Tylan Wallace took himself out at halftime in the bowl game. He gave up on his team in the middle of the game. That's not a good sign as far as overall culture at Oklahoma State. For their offense, they averaged 30.2 points per game. That's 52nd, and averaged 427.5 yards a game. Let's start with their quarterback, Spencer Sanders. Last year, he was 155 for 247, 62.8%, threw for 2,065 yards, 16 touchdowns, but 11 interceptions. Slight dual threat quarterback, 101 carries for 269 yards, that's 2.7 yards a carry, and 2 touchdowns. They did lose Chuba Hubbard, but LD Brown, his backup from last year, isn't a significant drop-off. Last year, he had 82 carries for 437 yards, that's 5.3 yards a carry, and 2 touchdowns. The passing game did take a bit of a hit. Tylan Wallace, their leading wide receiver, is gone. Here's how it's going to look this year, starting with their tight end. Tight end Logan Carter. Last year, he had 8 receptions for 84 yards and 1 touchdown. Now their wide receiving core. Wide receiver Rashad Owens, 2 receptions for 19 yards. Wide receiver Brennan Presley, 7 receptions for 125 yards and 3 touchdowns. Wide receiver Tay Martin, 15 receptions for 149 yards. Wide receiver Blaine Green, he's an incoming 3-star recruit, 6'1", 204 pounds. Wide receiver Braden Johnson, 20 receptions for 248 yards and 1 touchdown. An incoming 3-star recruit, wide receiver Jaden Bray, he's 6'3", 190 pounds. Besides the quarterback, this offense is fairly young. They do have some talent, but they gotta be better than what they were last year. That was a major letdown. They were supposed to be one of the best offenses in the nation last year, and they just weren't. Now let's talk about Oklahoma State's defense. It was their strength last year, surprisingly. 8 starters returned on the defense. That's a good start. So I think it's highly probable that the defense could outshine the offense again. As usual, guys, there are some names on both of these rosters that are tricky to say, so I probably will mispronounce some names. Let's start with Oklahoma State's defensive line. Defensive end Tyler Lacey, 32 tackles, 19 by himself, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Defensive tackle Jaden Jerrigan, 13 tackles, 8 by himself, 2 sacks. Defensive tackle Israel Antwine, 20 tackles, 9 by himself, a half a sack, and 1 forced fumble. And defensive end Trace Ford, 22 tackles, 15 by himself, 4.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 4 pass deflections. Here's their linebackers. Linebacker Devin Harper, 37 tackles, 24 by himself, 2 sacks, 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. Linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez, 82 tackles, 57 by himself, 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and 3 pass deflections. Last year, Oklahoma State allowed 23.5 points per game, that's 34th, and allowed 379 yards a game. Their defense might actually have to be better this year because I think their offense will take a step back. Oklahoma State runs more of a 4-2-5 defense, which means the secondary has added pressure. Let's take a look at their secondary, starting with their cornerbacks. Cornerback Jarek Bernard Converse, 32 tackles, 22 by himself, 1 forced fumble, and 7 pass deflections. Quarterback Christian Holmes, 24 tackles, 18 by himself, 5 pass deflections. Safety Colby Marvel Peel, 44 tackles, 31 by himself, 1 sack, 2 interceptions, 4 pass deflections. Safety Trey Sterling, 74 tackles, 51 by himself, a half a sack, 2 interceptions, one of which he returned for a touchdown and 4 pass deflections. Safety Tanner McAllister, 41 tackles, 32 by himself, and 5 pass deflections. Oklahoma State could potentially have a pretty good season, but as usual, they'll probably figure out a way to underachieve once again. Here's a look at Oklahoma State's 2021 college football schedule. First, they start off the season with a home game against Missouri State. Win. A home game against Tulsa. Not confident about this at all, but I'll give them a win. Then the road game to Boise State. I'll predict that at the end of the video. Home game against Kansas Kansas State, win. Baylor at home, win. Then they get their bye week. At Texas, loss. At Iowa State, loss. Home game against Kansas, win. At West Virginia, loss. ECU at home, loss. At Texas Tech, win. And then Oklahoma at home, loss. So depending on the Boise State prediction, I have Oklahoma State going either 7-5 or 6-6. Now let's look at Boise State. Last year they finished the season 5-2, second in the Mountain West. Their preseason ranking is 31st. Head coach Brian Harsin is off to Auburn. I guess he'll attempt to fix whatever Auburn's problem is. The good news is Boise State has so much talent, depth, and experience, it shouldn't matter all that much. This is a top 25 caliber team. Let's start with their offense. Last year they averaged 33.9 points per game, that's 27th, and averaged 352.6 yards a game. Boise State has a very interesting quarterback battle going on. The first possible starter is Hank Bachmeier. Last year he was 96 for 157, that's 61.1%, threw for 1,150 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. The other possible starter is quarterback Jack Sears. Last year he was 23 for 27, that's 85.2%, threw for 332 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Also a dual threat quarterback, 9 carries for 38 yards, that's 4.2 yards a carry and 1 touchdown. They have a pretty good running back in George Halani, 19 carries for 108 yards, that's 5.7 yards a carry and 1 touchdown. Here's a look at Boise State's passing game. I think it's going to be pretty good this year, starting with their tight end. Tight end Riley Smith, 15 receptions for 155 yards and 1 touchdown. Now their wide receiving core. Wide receiver Billy Bowens, 5 receptions for 39 yards. Wide receiver C.T. Thomas, 20 receptions for 347 yards, 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir, 52 receptions for 719 yards and 6 touchdowns. Incoming 3-star recruit wide receiver Shea Whiting, 6'2", 177 pounds. Wide receiver McLean Griffin, 2 receptions for 12 yards. And wide receiver Stephon Cobbs, 4 receptions for 72 yards. I think Boise State's offense will be a little bit better than what they were last year. Now let's take a look at what their defense is going to look like. Boise State's defense biggest issue is they have to be better against the run. They were pretty decent against the pass. The front 7 remains mostly intact. However, they did lose 2 starting quarterbacks in the secondary. Here's a look at their front 7, starting with the defensive line. Defensive end Shane Irwin, 30 tackles, 17 by himself, 6 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. Defensive tackle Scale Hahn, 9 tackles, 3 by himself, 1 sack, 1 pass deflection. Defensive tackle Scott Matlock, that's a really cool last name. I remember that show. 22 tackles, 9 by himself, 2 sacks. Defensive end Dimitri Washington, 9 tackles, 3 by himself, limited action. In 2019, he had 33 tackles, 21 by himself, 4.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Linebacker Ezekiel Noah, 39 tackles, 13 by himself, 1 forced fumble. Linebacker Riley Wimpy, 61 tackles, 33 by himself, 1 sack, 2 pass deflections. Nickelback Kala Kaniho, 32 tackles, 22 by himself, 7 pass deflections. Last year, Boise State's defense allowed 27.1 points per game, that's 52nd in the nation, allowed 373.3 yards a game. For Boise State's secondary, depth and experience might be an issue. Hopefully, there's not a huge fall off with the new cornerbacks taking over at that spot. Here's a look at their secondary, starting with the cornerbacks. Cornerback Markel Reed, 17 tackles, 15 by himself, 3 pass deflections. In the Bowling Green transfer, cornerback Caleb Biggers, 26 tackles, 17 by himself, 1 pass deflection. Free safety Tyreek Jones, 10 tackles, 5 by himself, 1 pass deflection, but also limited action. In 2019, he had 27 tackles, 24 by himself, 1 sack, 1 interception, and 2 pass deflections. And then strong safety J.L. Skinner, 37 tackles, 24 by himself, 1 interception, and 1 pass deflection. I don't think their secondary is going to have a massive fall off because they do have some experience and they are very talented. I definitely think Boise State will be stronger on the offensive side of the ball this year. Don't be surprised if Boise State makes it to a New Year's Six Bowl this year. One thing that definitely helps Boise State is they have a fairly easy schedule this year. Here's a look at Boise State's 2021 football schedule. Their very first game, that's a tough one at UCF. I'm going to say it's a loss. UCF's going to be a pretty good team and it is at the Bounce House. After that, they get UTEP at home. That's a win. Then they get Oklahoma State at home. I'll predict that here in just a minute. At Utah State, win. Nevada at home, win. At BYU, BYU's not going to be anywhere as good as what they were last year. Win for Boise State. Air Force at home, win. Then they get their bye week. At Colorado State, win. At Fresno State, win. Wyoming at home, win. New Mexico at home, win. At San Diego State, win. So depending on that Oklahoma State prediction, I have Boise State going either 11-1 or 10-2. And yes, winning the Mountain West. Now for the actual game prediction itself. Oklahoma State at Boise State. I think the first half is going to be a filling out process, but I think it being at Boise State yields a tremendous advantage for Boise State. I think Oklahoma State's defense can keep it close, but their offense is not going to be very good at all. I think it takes a step back this year. On the other side, I think Boise State's offense takes a step forward this year, and their only issues is depth in the secondary. So I'm actually going to go with Boise State in this prediction. My final score prediction for this game is 28-17. I think they start pulling away towards the end of the game, but Boise State is not going to score a ton of points on that good defense, but I do think they will put 4 touchdowns on the board, and Oklahoma State will struggle struggle to score points not only in this game, but all year this year. This is not going to be a good offense. So overall, I have Oklahoma State going 6-6, and I do think Mike Gundy will be on the hot seat after this year. I don't think he'll be fired, but he will definitely be on the hot seat. So that means I have Boise State going 11-1. It's not out of the question that Boise State could go undefeated. I just think that's a tough road game to start the season. So here's the deal for Boise State to get into a New Year's Six Bowl. Number one, it would really help if they could beat UCF on the road. That would help their resume tremendously. Number two, Cincinnati. They either need Cincinnati to go undefeated and make the playoffs, or they need Cincinnati to go the opposite direction and have 3 or 4 losses. So the Broncos are kind of caught right in the middle. I think they still have a decent shot to get it, but it all depends on Cincinnati. That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.